Okay, it's now 7 o'clock, and we'll call this meeting to order, and we do have a quorum. And if everyone will stand, Greg will lead us in the invocation.
Lord, we thank you for the time here. We thank you for allowing us to be here to do the business of Venus Independent School District and the business of the Venus community. We pray that you'll lead and guide us, that we make wise decisions, and may we ultimately act in a way that would be pleasing to you. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
And Chad will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome all the guests that are here tonight. Thanks for coming out. And anybody signed up for public comment? Okay. We will move to item number 5, presentation of the Lone Star Governance Quarterly Self-Evaluation. And with Vision 1 and 2, Tasha and Greg.
Vision 1, the board works collaboratively with the superintendent to develop the vision and student outcome goals. Mission statement: the mission of the district to provide students an educational foundation for students to become productive citizens. The district's motto is no excuses. Team members, Tasha Gore and Greg Hoffman. Our previous quarter, we were at Meet Focus of a 12. Our current status is Meets Focus 12. Continue receiving and approve monitoring reports per the monitoring calendar schedule. See the board minutes. Our next quarter target is to move to a Master's 15. And the next steps to get there is board and superintendent committed vision and SOGs to memory, student outcome goals. Board knows status of each student outcome goal. Engage stakeholders to develop broad community ownership of student outcome goals and vision.
You're doing great. I do want to comment on that last deal, to make that clear. We need to get out to the community and inform them as to what our goals are so that they get buy-in into it. You know, it says, get out in the community and talk, but what we're more or less. But that's basically what we need to do, is start setting up meetings with community members as 2 or 3 board members individually.
Which COVID is making that really hard.
Yeah,
To have community meetings.
but, to move to Masters, we have to accomplish that.
Right.
You're doing great.
Okay. We'll go to Vision 3 and 4, and that is going to be presented by,
We have more on Vision 2.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to rush you on through this.
Vision 2, the board has adopted goal progress measures aligned to each student outcome goal. Team members are Tasha Gore and Greg Hoffman. Previous quarter, we were at Meets Focus of a 12. Our current status is Meets Focus 12. GPM data shared at board meetings during this quarter per the monitoring calendar. See the board minutes. Next steps: continue receiving and approve monitoring reports per the monitoring calendar schedule. Engage stakeholders in LSG to develop broad community ownership of GPM's and vision. Our next quarter target is to move to a Master's 15. And to get to the 15, all board members and the superintendent agree there is a broad community ownership of the GPMs through involvement and communication with students, staff, and community members.
Okay, we'll move to Vision 3 and 4, and it'll be Katie, John Browno, and Tasha again.
In Vision 3, the board has adopted a vision for what student outcomes will be and has adopted constraints aligned with that vision. The team members are myself, Katie Drombaranu, and Tasha Gore. In the previous quarter, we were at Meets Focus, a 9. Our current status is also Meets Focus at a 9. We adopted Lone Star Governance emergency constraints for the superintendent on August 17th, 2020, see the board minutes, and and adopted superintendent constraints and board constraints January 21st, 2020. Our next steps will be to develop and consider a theory of action. We discussed this in January on the 30th, 2021, and to also engage stakeholders to develop a broad community ownership of these constraints. Our next quarter target is to move to master's level focus, which is 10 points. And in Vision 4, the board has adopted constraint progress measures, CPMs, aligned to each constraint. The team members, again, myself, Katie Drumbradu, and Tasha Gore. In our previous quarter, we were at meets focus of 4. Our current status is meets focus of 4. The superintendent emergency constraints progress measures were adopted on August 17th, 2020. Please see the board minutes. Our next steps are to continue receiving and approve constraint progress monitoring reports per the monitoring calendar schedule, and to engage stakeholders in Lone Star Governance to develop broad community ownership of CPMs. Our next quarter target would be to move to master's level focus, which is 5 points. And to do this, we agree that there's a broad community ownership of the CPMs through involvement and communication with student, staff, and community members.
Anything else? Okay. We will go to accountability 1 and 2, and Gerald's not here tonight, so it'll be Katie and Deborah.
You good? I'm good. Whichever one.
Go ahead.
All right. In accountability 1, the board invests at least half of its time focusing on its vision and student outcome goals. In the previous quarter, we were at meets focus at 12. Our current status is also meets focus at 12. With monitoring calendar updated on February 18th, 2020. See those board minutes, and the use of time trackers. Our next steps would be to collect time trackers for information for each board called special meeting, and analyze agendas to review quarterly average of time tracker reports. Our next quarter target would be to go to a master's level focus at 15. And to do this, we would track our monthly use of time in a board authorized public meetings and categorizing every minute according to the use of the time use tracker. In accountability 2, the board measures and communicates, but does not interfere in, progress toward the vision and student outcome goals. The team members are Gerald Leonard, myself, Katie Drombreno, as well as Deborah Cruz. The previous quarter, we were approaches focus at 2 points. Our current status is master's focus 5. The staff use tracker was completed January 30th of 2021. Our next steps would be to continue to approve quarterly progress reports and align superintendent evaluation instruments to Lone Star Governance SOG's constraints. Our next quarter target is to maintain a master's level focus at 5. And the board considers superintendent performance as indistinguishable from school system performance by evaluating the superintendent exclusively on the results and progress toward the student outcome goals and the constraints using the information within the monitoring reports.
Okay, thank you, Katie.
Sir?
Okay, we will move to structure. Myself and Deborah.
Window. Okay, structure, the board operates in a way to allow the superintendent to accomplish the vision. Team members, Les Owens and myself, Deborah Cruz. Previous quarter, meets focus, 12 points. Current status, meets focus, 12 points. The next step, final version of board packet, 7 calendar days before meeting. Continue no edits to regular board meeting agenda 72 hours prior or during meeting. Continue monitor no more than 5 topics requiring board action. Next quarter target to move to master's focus 15.
Great job. Okay, we will move to the next item, which is advocacy, and that's Chad and maybe me.
I can do that.
Okay.
The advocacy, the board promotes the vision. Team members is Les Owens and myself, Chad Sutton. Turn my mic on. Previous quarter does not meet focus, that's a 0. Current status, preparing to focus is 1. We conducted a town hall meeting at a church last year, which is how we got a 1. Our next step is to create more opportunities for public communication on progress of board-adopted student outcome goals and discussion of vision and our values of our students, and recognize students and staff accomplishments towards our student outcome goals. Our next quarter target is approaches focus, which is a 3. And one of those in the approaches focus is one of the board to recognize the accomplishments of its students and staff regarding progress on student outcome goals, and also by continuing to host community meetings to discuss progress towards student outcome goals. And I think that's something that we'll work hard at trying to accomplish.
Okay.
All right, let's see. So, on the unity, the board works collaboratively with the superintendent to lead towards the vision. Team members are Greg Hoppin, Gerald Leonard, and myself, Chad Sutton. Previous quarter, we approaches focus was at a 3. Current status, where meets focus, at a 9. Attendance, of course, this is on attendance. See board minutes for documentation. Next steps are to adhere to board operating procedures, continue to maintain at least 80% or higher attendance rate, which is very doable. Lone Star Government's 2-day workshop for new trustees, trying to get one of our new trustees up to date on the Lone Star Governments. And next target will be Master's Focus, which is a 10, which I think we can achieve.
Okay.
If you will, before I get into the individual campus recognitions of staff and teachers and students, wanted to jump to a presentation by Mr. Benjamin Vollmer, and I've asked him to come tonight. He's with our middle school, and he's going to tell you about a unit that they've been doing. He's been doing it for a number of years, but I'm going to step aside and let him tell you all about it. Mr. Vollmer?
Hi there. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to visit with you. The Venus Middle School 8th grade has made it part of its focus every year to have a Holocaust study, and it just has grown and grown every year. It started with the English department. We got the other teachers involved. It became a full-fledged 8th grade cross-curricular. Kids would walk with traveling papers, and they'd have to present them to enter a classroom. They would have teachers at random pull them out of a line by a door just to visit with them, trying to give them a little bit of the sense of the people we were reading and studying, that their life was always uncertain. And a lot of the kids began to really understand it. In the last couple of years, Texas now has mandated or given rules that every school in Texas should have a Holocaust Remembrance Week. And so the Venus Middle School has taken this opportunity to expand the vision through Ms. Buck's guidance, who always supports her teachers. And so this year, part of our movement has been to continue to build rapport with the Holocaust Museum. Venus is actually recognized by Dr. Abosh and the Dallas Holocaust Museum and Tolerance Center because of the authentic work they see we're doing. We send them a student work every year, letters, correspondence. Actually, Dr. Abosh says we're probably a model school when it comes to Holocaust instruction. So that being said, we reached out to them. They gave us some information and resources, which we just distributed to the teachers and said, hey, teachers, this is a rule. How could you use it? Would you be willing to use it? And we stepped back. Ms. Buck's philosophy has always been let teachers join it, not force it, and so it happened. So the first thing we did was we adopted daily announcements from the Holocaust Museum that were read by the National Junior Honor Society and STUCO students each morning, which ended with a call to action each day of something they could tangibly do. But how did our teachers participate? And so what our teachers have done is social studies did whole school. Each period they met in the cafeteria, showed one video, and then each class went back and did breakout sessions that were student leveled, so the kids could answer. The choir actually found that there were composers of materials during the camps, and they found some pieces that they could play and the students could analyze or look at that were composed while there. And they learned about that they used toilet paper, x-ray paper, charcoal, anything they could to write music. Science went ahead and addressed it through pseudoscience, which would be how the Nazis perverted genetics, and they studied genetics in 7th, so it fit very well with what they do in their units. And so they talked about how you can manipulate science for false statements. Our library actually did book talks specific to each grade level over 2 weeks that the students would know these resources are available in our district and in our campus. And then it took names so that they could start moving those materials through the student population. Speech, and Avid, actually Speech watched a gentleman present his story as a survivor, and then they discussed it. In Avid, they actually read a manuscript and did a case study from the survivor. Art had 2 different approaches. One art teacher actually showed some Holocaust art from the different individuals, and then the kids were to create their interpretation or what they felt would exemplify the feelings of the people. Another class actually did a small session where they described the attributes of the supreme race, so to speak, from the Nazis, and would then select them or not select them. Well, you don't meet the criteria, so go sit in this desk. You don't meet the criteria. Now, how do you feel that you were just judged by your looks or your appearance? In the ELAR department, and obviously as working in that department, we did quite a bit, but the Read 180 class actually started with current events where they read an article or material about current day slavery. And the kids learned that there are 24 million people in slavery worldwide today. And then they took that and addressed it through work camps, how that was a similar form of slavery for the Jews and anyone else that the Nazis deemed unfit. 6th graders watched videos and discussed. 7th is reading The Number of the Stars, and they're discussing the themes of what it takes to stand up, to protect others, even at your own peril. 8th grade had just finished an argumentative unit. So we went at how people use their words and language to manipulate outcomes and how to look for it and how to be aware. Are they using language to manipulate your emotions? Are they manipulating you? How do you see past that? And then ESL, they extended the ELAR classes. And so what vocabulary and concepts they did there, I also know they took and did some firsthand accounts of survivors, mini stories, and then again challenge the kids about how do you stand up for someone that's not able to stand up for themselves. All that has brought us back to the original, which was the Holocaust unit. it just keeps growing. It's amazing how large it's getting. Phenomenal art. We give the kids all different ways to express the way they interpret or they feel about the unit itself. The kids are upset this year that we are not currently going to the Holocaust Museum. We're being very transparent. We are on a list. We're first on the list according to the museum because they like Venus so much and how well our students have behaved. When we explained the situation to the students in 8th grade, they were displeased. And so we decided to encourage them to do a letter writing campaign. And we're going to help them learn how to ask for permission to convince them that we are a school that would be worthy of going. We'll follow the rules, but we've been challenging them that it's not a begging and it's not a pity party. It's you learned how to write argumentative, argue why Venus should go and how to overcome the counter argument. So we're very pleased. Thank you for continuing to support the middle school and our Holocaust studies. So.
I really appreciate your passion. I can see it, and I thank you. I'm very excited to see that this has been so well received, and your work toward it is fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Any other questions for Mr. Vollmer? Mr. Vollmer is just one of our outstanding teachers, and he has the passion, as you said, is obvious, and the passion's contagious. 8 different areas are picking up on this and all getting involved in it, and the lessons learned here are lifelong lessons. So that's why I asked him to come in here and do this. So again, thank you, Mr. Vollmer. Do you mind getting a picture? So, yeah.
What?
Yeah, a pic, yeah, you come up here, you gotta get a picture.
What?
It's COVID, so we don't. Are we ready?
1, 2, 3.
All right, thank you, sir.
I have a question. Do you think there's a possibility that this year they would be able to go? I mean, is it looking that way, or?
Currently, there is a strong possibility. We've been very fortunate. I actually got invited and sat on an education committee for the museum. And Dr. Abash and I share emails and communicate. We have been told that each month they're going to reevaluate. Venus has already been approved. There is I can't promise it, but there's a strong possibility we will get a scholarship again this year to go. Because they've seen an authentic effort, and when the work we mail them every year is student created and initiated and unique, they present it to their donors, and their donors have been donating partly because of our student effort. So it's possible. We're hoping we can push them over the edge. One of their complaints, which is a valid concern, was not wearing masks, not following directions, not socially distancing. Mr. Hopper, Ms. Buck, and I have already been doing some talking. Ms. Buck is open to, and so is Mr. Hopper, doing 4 small groups. So we break our groups small enough to accommodate the spacing. The kids are following our directions on campus, so we feel they will do it there. It's neat to see them that passionate about it. They said that if it opened up, we would be strongly considered, so.
It's one thing to, and we always like to highlight our students and our staff that have been selected of the month. But I think it's quite another also to highlight some of the great work that our teachers are doing. And so once again, an outstanding educator as Mr. Vollmer, but that has impassioned this whole campus. So it's exciting stuff. So I'd like to now, if you would, allow me to introduce or to at least announce our students and staff and our teachers of the month. So beginning with the primary school, excuse me. Beginning with the primary school, our student of the month is Taryn Young, And Taryn is a connected learning student in Miss Gray's online class. She's an exemplary student. She's always ready for class. She's prompt and always ready to go. She's respectful and she participates in class, raises her hand and stays muted, which is difficult for a lot of us, right? She always shows patience and she waits to be called on. And her teacher says, I can count on her to be an example to others. She's responsible, and she always completes all of her seesaw activities in a timely manner. I never have to remind her to do her work, and her work is always well done. She is progressing, and her reading skills show how well she is doing. I am super proud of her. That's Miss Taryn Young for the Venus Primary School Student of the Month. And Venus Primary Staff Member of the Month is Stephanie Garrison. Mrs. Garrison serves as special ed aide and she works in our life skills room. Ms. Garrison is always helping where needed and is a team player. When staff have been out, she's been assigned to many different places and she takes over to get the job done. She makes every effort to help and she doesn't complain about her job. She loves those special ed students and will make a great classroom teacher one day. That's the Staff Member of the Month for Venus Primary, Miss Stephanie Garrison. And now the Teacher of the Month for Primary is Miss Walker, Miss Jennifer Walker. Ms. Walker is a special ed teacher and she heads up our PPCD program in VPS. She is kind and patient. She cares deeply for her students and their families. She's been so helpful and always shares her great ideas. We appreciate her because she puts a lot of effort in meeting the needs of her students. Mrs. Walker does an amazing job providing activities that will help students grow and learn. Mrs. Walker is a great role model and a mentor, both personally and professionally. That's Mrs. Jennifer Walker. Now we have Venus Elementary School Student of the Month. This is Oscar Castaneda Furman. Well, fifth grader Oscar worked really hard while online for the first 6 weeks. When he came back to face-to-face learning, he worked even harder. He's always kind to other students and respectful to teachers. He never has to be told more than once what to do, and he just jumps in and does what he has to do to get it done. He's always helpful, especially with other students. I asked him to befriend a new student that was really quiet, and he did so with a smile on his face. But the best thing about Oscar is he always laughs when I tell a corny joke. This must be his teacher. Or sing off key. So our student of the month at Venus Elementary is Oscar Castaneda Furman. Venus Elementary staff member of the month is Valerie Siller. We actually have a tie between Valerie and another one, but I'll take Valerie first. Mrs. Siller has done an outstanding job as an inclusion paraprofessional. She's always willing to help out and has covered many inclusion schedules by herself. She's a team player and invaluable to the VES campus. Her dedication to student success is her top priority, and Ms. Siller is an absolute joy to have on the VES campus. And this month she is sharing this award with fellow staff person Ashley Keel. Mrs. Keel goes above and beyond in her work duties. She loves our students as if they were her own. She's respectful and kind to everyone she comes into contact with. Mrs. Keel is a very hard worker and dedicated to VES. She's an amazing addition to her team. So that's Miss Ashley Keel, Miss Valerie Siller. And finally, for the elementary school, the teacher of the month, this is Manuela Sanchez. Mrs. Sanchez is one of our second grade bilingual teachers. Her room is always buzzing with purposeful and fun activities for her students. Not only is Ms. Sanchez an excellent teacher, but a great role model for all teachers. Her dedication to making her students succeed is the basis for every decision she makes in her classroom. I can vouch for that. She always goes above and beyond for her students and their families. Mrs. Sanchez is an invaluable asset to the VES team. That's Mrs. Manuela Sanchez. And now, Venus Middle School Student of the Month, Nolan Wendell. Nolan is a very hard worker. He does everything we ask of him with a smile on his face, and he's fairly quiet, but he's a true representative of everything we look for in a Venus Bulldog. That's Mr. Nolan Wendell, Middle School Student of the Month. Middle School Staff Member of the Month is Mrs. Kathy Kasel. Mrs. Kasel has worked very hard as the ISS teacher, not just to instill discipline in students, but to build relationships with them. And you can see that in action as she works with her students. She always volunteers wherever she is needed and is very happy to do so. She continues to be a wonderful asset on our campus. Mrs. Kathy Kasel, the Middle School Staff Member of the Month. And now the Middle School Teacher of the Month. Mr. D. Hargrove is a leader on our campus. He loves to be involved in all things in the middle school, and he has been an innovator this year in working with other teachers to propose a STEM academy at the middle school. That's Teacher of the Month for the middle school, Mr. D. Hargrove. And now we go to Venus High School. Our Venus High School Student of the Month is Ariel Aguayo. And Ariel is a senior who has been our Bulldog mascot for the last 4 years. If you've ever seen Ariel dance out there, she is a delight. She's always smiling, offering anyone she sees a big hug, and is the best jokester at Venus High School. I believe many people at Venus High School would agree that Ariel's presence each day provides joy and happiness to our day. That's Venus High School Student of the Month, Ariel Aguayo. Venus High School Staff Member of the Month is Myrna Garcia. Mrs. Garcia's first year, she's in her first year at Venus High School. Having Mrs. Garcia in the life skills classroom has been a wonderful addition to providing support to our most diverse students. Mrs. Garcia is patient, hardworking, and has provided the support in the classroom that has helped transform into a safe and loving learning environment. That's the Staff Member of the Month at Venus High School, Miss Myrna Garcia. And now, our Venus High School Teacher of the Month, Mr. Donald Piantanita. Mr. Piantanita, or Mr. P, as he is known, is in his first year in education, and he has been a wonderful, welcomed addition to the Venus High School community. Not only has Mr. P made impactful connections and relationships with students by going to almost every home athletic event, but he also has agreed to take over our tennis program. Mr. P is always positive, always has a smile on his face, and we are very thankful for his commitment to all the students at VHS, and his love and devotion to our students is quite obvious in all he does. That's our Venus High School Teacher of the Month, Mr. Donald Piantanita. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of these students and these staff members, and we'd love to have done this in person. We'd love to have done it in pictures or on video, but we had a little bit of a blizzard. So, thank you.
Do any of the principals have anything they want to add to their monthly report? Any questions on the monthly reports from the campuses? Okay. We will move to item number 7, Student Growth Performance Update by Dr. Morgan.
Hello, everyone. I have quite a lengthy report for you tonight, so we're not going to talk through every single slide, but at any point, please stop and ask any questions that you have. I'm going to present this presentation so that everyone online can also see it. All right, so you should be seeing the slide that says Student Growth Report. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we are ready to give you our report on how our students are doing in our middle of year assessments. We've been talking a lot about the past year about how we are going to use the NWEA program MAP growth, and we have now tested our students twice. So we had our beginning of year assessment back in September, and we have now finished our middle of year assessment. We haven't quite finished, let me just say that. We do have a few students on a couple of campuses that need to be tested. Last week's winter storm closures, of course, threw that off. But we do have Most of the students tested and the data that we have is good enough to present to you. So even testing the remaining students, we won't see much variation in this data. So what we want to talk about is the difference between student achievement and student growth. When we talk about achievement, we are talking about performance levels that students are giving. So for example, when we give an assignment and then we grade it, we're grading their performance. When we give students a test and we take a grade, we're measuring their performance. So when we think of things like STAR tests, that is definitely measuring student achievement, their performance. When we are talking about student growth, however, we want to be very careful to remember that we're talking about an individual student and where they started and where they are now. So not all of our students start on the same level. They don't start at the same point. And when we talk about student growth, we want to look at, did each student move forward? Are they moving from where they were? Maybe they didn't get all the way where we want them to be. They haven't achieved what we expect of them, but they are growing. And so we want to be careful to look at growth versus achievement. And one of the reasons why we selected the MAP test is because it measures both areas. So this year, in a nutshell, we have two goals for student learning. Number one, we want all of our students to perform at higher levels on the MAP growth test, and we can determine that by their RIT scores. And so we've talked about the MAP test and what it means and what all these things stand for. And I don't expect anyone to be able to stand up and summarize it, so we're not going to ask you to do that. But the RIT score is just their, it's the score the test generates, so we can see how a student did. What RIT stands for is actually, I don't think any of us online could tell you at the moment what it actually stands for. We don't need to get into that, but the score is what we're looking at to measure achievement and to measure growth. So when we measure achievement, we're comparing a student's RIT scores to other students, to how other students in other across the nation did. When we're talking about student growth, we just want to know how did that one single student do. So we're going to look at both areas in this presentation. All right, this slide, what everyone needs to understand is what the bell curve looks like. We've all heard of the bell curve and how there should be so many students at the bottom and so many students at the top. You probably maybe have had a teacher or college professor who got stuck on the bell curve and insisted that there had to be so many students. We don't quite hold to that when we're grading students. We do want to see everyone master what they're learning and get the 100%. But we know, based on research and based on statistical studies, that when we give a test that is a norm reference test, like the MAP test, we're going to see something like a bell curve when we see the results. We are going to have students who perform in the low categories. We will have students who perform in the high categories, and most of the students will fall somewhere in between. So when we're looking at the student percentile rankings, this tells us how many students performed in the bottom 20% compared to all of the students who took the test across the nation. That would be the red, the low category, the bottom 20th percentile. And then 21 to 40 would be the orange, low average. Average covers about 41 to 60. And most of our students are probably going to fall in the average. And then high average would be the green category, which you'll see in a few minutes. And that would be about 61 to 80%. And then we'll have about 20%, the top 20th percentile would be the blue. And so what we want to see is the red bars getting lower, pushing up the orange, pushing up the yellow, pushing up the green when we look at our bell curves in just a minute. So that's what that slide is. So why do we even do that? Why do we look at where students are? So we use those percentile rankings for a variety of reasons. What it tells us, students who are performing in the red category, so that's the bottom 20th percentile, this is telling us that these students are performing below grade level. They are missing key concepts and skills that they're not able to grasp the material at the grade level that they should. If we want to talk in STAR language, these students are very unlikely to even approach grade level standards or not pass the STAR test. And so we want to pay careful attention to those students, providing them extra support, targeted intervention. So when we talk about students who see the interventionist, that is this group of students. Students who are performing in the low average category are also performing below grade level. Some of them may hit that approaches standard mark, which is technically passing the STAR test. Some of them may not. And so teachers are definitely watching this group of students to see where they are and what support they need. So they're giving them differentiated instruction in the classroom. They might be asking them to stay after school for tutoring and small groups. Students who are performing in that yellow category are students who are performing near grade level. So they might be right under, they might be right above, but they are average performers. They are likely to approach the STAR test. So these kids are probably going to pass the STAR test. Some of them may even hit that meets category for grade level expectations. But again, most of these students are probably going to need a little bit of extra above and beyond just the regular classroom instruction to make sure that they can do as well as they possibly can. And so teachers are going to differentiate instruction for them, provide tutoring if needed. The high average kiddos are students who they should approach that passing standard without a problem, and most of them will probably meet the grade level expectation. These are the kids we want to make sure that we're differentiating for we say differentiating up. We want to make sure that we're pushing them, that we're giving them extension activities so that they're not stagnant, that they are still growing also. So even though they have maybe grasped the grade level content, we want to ask what more do they need so we can push them. And then that is especially true of the kids who perform in that blue level. So those are our highest performing students. These are the kids who tend to get hundreds and 95s on everything. They grasp the material fairly well, fairly easily. These kids should meet grade level expectations on the STAR, and most of them will probably master the grade level expectations on the STAR, which means they're actually performing a little bit above grade level. And we want to, a lot of our GT kids will fall into this category. So we definitely want to make sure that we are pushing them and not holding them back by giving them projects, letting them be creative, that sort of thing. So that's how we use the percentile ratings, rankings, and why they matter. Okay, so what are we doing on each, how are we using the growth data? So at the campus level, we are comparing grade levels, we're comparing classrooms, because we want to see where are there spurts of high growth, where is there maybe low growth, where are there instances where there was no growth. We want to find out what's happening. So teachers whose students have higher than normal growth, they're probably doing some pretty awesome things. So we want to go and check those out and share those practices with other teachers. We also want to provide support to teachers who maybe we're not seeing the growth that should be there. And we want to make sure that the teacher doesn't need extra support. Maybe they need a one-on-one coaching for a while. Maybe they don't have the right resources. Maybe they have a particularly challenging group of students and they need support with just making sure they can meet all of the needs. And then on the teacher level, we want teachers looking in their classes, in their class sections for those specific areas of need. So where are students performing higher than others? What are they missing? What concepts are they missing if they didn't hit the growth goals that they may have had? And then this is also helps us identify students who need that extra intervention. Okay, so all of that being said, before I even get into the charts, are there any questions on any of that? Okay. All right, so what you're going to see, let me just show you what each of the different graphs looks like, and then I'm just going to give you a couple minutes to flip through. We'll just kind of go through the slides. I don't need to talk through all of them to you. And then I'll ask the campus principals if they want to say anything about their campus specifically. So here's what you are seeing on these. This first one is overall each grade level. This is kindergarten and first grade, so this is the primary campus. The light blue bar is the average RIT score at the beginning of the year, and the dark blue bar is the average RIT score at the end of the year. So or the middle of the year, I'm sorry, the MOY. So all we are seeing is students performed at about 146 at the beginning of the year, and they performed at about 154 at the middle of the year. about-ish. So they grew 6 points in their average RIT score, which is outstanding. That's what we want to see. We want to see growth. You may remember one of the concerns at the beginning of the year was that some students at the lower grades were taking the MAP test online at home and had some help from parents, well-meaning parents. And that unfortunately inflated their scores. And so we weren't able to get a very true picture of where our students were performing in the lower grades at the beginning of the year. So this is actually pretty incredible that for our middle of year assessment, all of the students tested on campus, so none of them had adult support taking the middle of year test. And we still see a growth in their average RIT score, which is really incredible when you think about it, that their beginning of year RIT score was inflated, but yet we still see growth at the middle of year RIT score. So that's kudos to the primary school for that. The second slide that you'll see for each campus is the comparison between the grade level average RIT score and the norm average RIT score for that grade. So for example, this light blue bar is that kindergarten average RIT score at the beginning of the year, and the norm was this orange one. So like we said, that was inflated. So it was it was an abnormality that our students scored so much higher than the norm. But yet, look here at the middle of year, our students still outperformed the norm, which is fantastic. And so same thing in first grade. We have our beginning of year average compared to the norm. And then you can see it levels out a little bit, that our average RIT score was slightly less than the average norm for first grade math. And that's okay. So that's what that bar graph is showing you. And then you'll see grade by grade, a comparison of the beginning of year assessment where our students in their percentile rankings, and then a comparison to the middle of year. So you can see that bell curve. What we want to see is the yellow bar at the middle, and we want to see the orange and green a little bit lower than that, and the red and blue a little bit lower than that. So anything outside of that bell curve is a red flag to us that there's something going on there that we need to take a look at. So this, for example, this high level of students in the high category, that was definitely a red flag. We shouldn't have had that many students performing that high. And you can see, though, at the middle of the year, that number did go down, and those students were performing in high average. But what this tells us is that we do have a lot of students who are performing above average, which is fantastic. And then you'll see for kindergarten through fifth grade, you'll see this graph. Unfortunately, we cannot manipulate the data to provide this graph for the secondary. There are too many sections of classes for each subject. But what you see on this graph is a comparison of how the students did at the beginning of year, that's the blue bar, compared to the middle of year, that's the red bar, for each teacher. So the reason why we did this was so we could show you how our students did who started the year online versus who started the year face-to-face. So in kindergarten, for example, we had 3 sections of classes who started the year online, 2 English speaking and 1 bilingual. 3 out of the 4 lowest growth areas were those online classes. And so that definitely tells us that the students who started online and were online for most of the first semester, that they struggled a little bit more. They didn't grow quite as much. So you can see that these 2 sections of online kiddos actually had negative growth, which was to be expected. But then we have some fantastic growth over here in the face-to-face section, where we have the highest, the most amount of growth was 15 RIT points in this face-to-face class. And so this is information that teachers can work with and find out, like, what is this teacher doing versus this teacher? What is working? What is not working? And that just allows us to have those conversations. All right, so those are all the graphs. So what I would like to do now is stop talking for a few minutes and let you look at the data of what we have. Does everybody have a written report to look at, or do I need to keep clicking through the slides?
We have a copy of the presentation. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So feel free to flip through that. If you have a question about a specific grade level, please let me know. Everything starts with math by campus and then grade level, and then goes to reading by campus and then grade level.
Dr. Morgan, while we're waiting on that, could I ask you to, we've been on the primary level, could I ask you to pick a section on each campus and just kind of hit the high spots? Just one slide for us, please?
Absolutely.
Okay. Is that okay?
All right, so elementary, we can see there's definitely growth in each grade level. And so each grade level, their average root score increased, which is great. Fourth and fifth grade, we had closed the gap between their average root score and the norm average root score, which is definitely what we want to see. For the norm comparison, this is a year of ironing out the wrinkles with the MAP test. And so second grade took a different version of the test, beginning of year and middle of year. But now we know which one they're supposed to take, and they will continue taking the right one. And so that is why that red bar goes up instead of down. But that is something we are definitely addressing. Over here we have even all the online classes, there was no negative growth, so that's great. Third grade math. We've had some good growth across math. We talked about math last month and that students are growing and close to that passing rate for STAR, which is what we want to see. We had some really good growth in fifth grade. So we definitely see those bars going in the right direction. Reading for elementary, we had reading growth in every grade level. Second grade bilingual teachers, you just heard about Ms. Sanchez, who was the teacher of the month at elementary, and she's one of our bilingual teachers. And so you can see her team did incredible with growing 12 points in their average grit score. And of course, that's with her other two bilingual teachers. So same thing with reading. We had some growth. Again, that bilingual second grade team is now 2 points above the norm average, which is great.
Dr. Morgan, do you mind?
Yes.
Do you mind addressing the norm average and how we're comparing to that, where that norm average comes from, and how that compares to us this year?
Absolutely. So the norm average is it's a research base, so which just means that they're looking at multiple students taking a test. So we're talking about millions of students who took the same test at the same grade level, and they're looking for what is the average scale, like where do students fall, and that is where they develop the norm average. And the last time they normed the average for the MAP test was I think 3 years ago. And so that's something else to keep in mind when we're looking at comparing to the norm this year. This is a very different year for everybody across the board. So if you remember last month, we looked at math and we showed you how at the beginning of the year, students who took the MAP test in math performed far below where a similar group of students had taken that same test the year before. And we will more than likely see similar data come out of NWEA after this middle of year assessment. We don't have access, they haven't done that research yet because schools are still giving the middle of year assessments. But it's safe to say across the board, students are not going to perform as close to that norm as they have maybe they did last year. And so when we talk about comparing our average score to the norm average score, what we're saying is we want our students performing at the same levels as other students who in other schools and other places do as in this grade. And so when our average is below, more of our students are not performing at the same levels as other students from other places. And so that what we want to be careful of is making sure that, one, we're providing good, rigorous, effective instruction at the grade level where it's supposed to be, and that we are monitoring students individually to see where they might be lacking and where they might need some support and some help. So whenever we see this whenever we see this gap decreasing, it's just telling us our students are growing, and they're catching up, or they're evening the playing field, if you will. If we don't see it increase, that doesn't mean something is terribly wrong, but we just want to make sure that we're looking at it and seeing, like, are we doing everything we need to be doing? Are we giving the students the best that we can? What other factors are playing into that scenario?
Right. And I guess my point here is just so we all understand, and it's great to be able to come back and pinpoint exactly where we can work with these students to have them improve. But the point again, that when we see so many of our scores here that are below that norm average was set 2 or 3 years ago, not during the COVID year. So our hope is that we can get them up very, very quickly. But it's not like our kids are consistently scoring below everyone else this year.
Correct. And that's something that we really do need to keep in mind. This year is abnormal. So the things that we're seeing, that doesn't mean that this is the way it normally is, or what it would have been last year, what it would have been if students had all of the instruction they should have had. Also keep in mind, throughout this semester, throughout this school year so far, we've had students who started off online, who came back, who were quarantined, so they were gone from class again. So we've had students in and out, and that affects their learning. And it's not a fault of their own. It is the situation that's happening. But anytime they are not with the teacher, learning from the teacher, it creates an opportunity for deficits. And so that's what we want to be very careful to look for, and why. And I think our data provides evidence that's why it was so important that we wanted to have our kids in the classroom with the teacher. Let's see. Let me go on to. So middle school, we had some really good growth in reading. So again, every grade level is increasing. 7th and 8th grade reading, we're able to decrease that gap between their average writ and the norm writ, which is good. We can see a leveling out of the curve, which is good, again in 7th grade, and then again in 8th grade. And we can see that high average group going up, which is fantastic. That's what we want to see. In math, we did see growth in 6th grade. So 7th grade, what does it mean if there's no growth? So many factors can influence this. But it means for now that the students were, on average, performed about as well as they did. That doesn't mean they didn't learn. And so I want to make sure that we're all very careful to understand that. The way the test is given, it's not that they're taking the same test they took at the beginning of the year, where everything's on the same level and everything, they should have done better because it was the same test. The test starts them where they finished at the beginning of the year. So they are testing at the concepts, the grade level concepts that the test thinks they're ready for. And so when it says there's no growth, maybe they didn't gain as much, but that doesn't mean they didn't learn anything. And so that's something else to keep in mind. So we can see middle school, the 6th and 7th grade comparisons. And the other thing to keep in mind here is 7th grade, we only had 61% of the students tested when we were able to capture this data. And unfortunately with 8th grade, we just did not have enough data.
Still there, Dr. Morgan?
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so we have Algebra 1, again, kind of a similar situation with 7th grade math, but we are lacking some students who were tested, so they are finishing that up. You can see high school math. And so this curve looks like what it should look like. And so that's something to investigate. So like I said, anything that seems out of normal, we want to look and figure out what happened. why did so many students score in the high category here, but not so many here? So we'll definitely investigate that. Reading, we saw some really good growth in high school reading. And another thing to keep in mind with the older students is they're not going to grow as much as the younger students, because once you get into the high school courses, a lot of the skills they already have, a lot of the concepts they already have. And so we're digging in deeper in some of those areas, especially reading. And so you won't see the plus 12 points that you might see in the lower grades. Right here, the scale is to 225. The highest score is 250. And so it doesn't really go much higher than this for high school. And then there's the grade by grade. Okay, so if it's all right, I would like to give principals a chance to weigh in on their campus if there's anything they wanted to add.
I'll jump in and go first. As you saw, 8th grade, we didn't have enough data yet. They had started taking the test, but hadn't finished when we got out. So I know they started working on that again today. So we will get more of that. Didn't see the growth we would have liked to have seen in math as much as we did in reading. And so what we're doing is revamping what math is doing in Bulldog in the after school tutoring, and really focusing on those kids that are missing some of their skills for whatever reason, COVID or whatever the reason is. So that is one thing we are doing. We saw good gains in reading, and I think a lot of that I'm going to lay at the feet of Anne Marie here. When we were working on the grant, they shared some. Well, one, we're changing how we're teaching. And then two, we were able to get in a program that she has worked with the teachers, Lexia, with, and we have used religiously at the middle school campus. And they're practicing every single day, and it's grammar, and it's vocabulary, it's comprehension. And so it's not long periods every day. It's a few minutes every day that they work on that. And I think a lot of what we're seeing is that everyday repetition of the practice for that, and it's kids working on their level where they are. So it's challenging the kids who need to, those high kids that sometimes get lost, but it's also challenging those low kids to where they are, instead of dumping them into 7th grade when they're not ready for 7th grade, or when they're in 7th grade but they're really ready for 10th grade. So that's a whole lot of me talking, but Anne Marie has worked very closely with our language arts teachers in getting that program going, and I think we're reaping the benefits of that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lori.
Go ahead, Karen.
Y'all go ahead.
Oh, go. Okay, I can be brief. One of the things, besides looking at growth, there's so much data in the MAP and the WEA, because we can look at nationwide norms and compare our data to basically literally millions of other students. But one of the things that this does, besides just looking at individual growth, it has some predictors that are very interesting. For example, it will predict a student's performance on STAR, which we're seeing in the data. But one of the things that it will predict most accurately is performance on the ACT college readiness test that students take in the spring. For example, in our report, it'll say the grade. It'll talk about how many students are not on track to get a score on the ACT that would allow them to go to a four-year college. It will predict how many students are on track to earn the score of 22, which is one level of achievement on the ACT, and how many are on track to score 24, which would give you access to many of the top tier colleges in the state and in the country. So one of the things that was interesting that we used to do with this kind of data is we would put up, here's the colleges you can go to if you have an ACT score of this. And here's where you could go with the 22, and here's where you could go with the 24. And it's one of the things that really motivated students is when they would take the MAP test and they say, okay, what college can I go to now? So some of the predictive data from the MAP testing is exciting and it's very motivating for students to see. It's one of the things I like about it. And I'll show you, I don't know if I can show you, I don't know if you'll see my screen. You get, it's not very good, but you can see the data, it gives it to you in little circle maps. Not too clear, but you can get a really good visual of where the data is.
I'll jump in. I'm not. Or are you going to go, Lori? I tend to cut
Go
people.
ahead.
I tend to cut
Go
people
ahead.
off of these things if y'all don't remember from last time. Anyways, what I was going to say kind of goes back to what Anne Marie had mentioned. We were very pleasantly surprised with the data for our middle of the year because we knew that our beginning of year scores were pretty inflated. So to be able to see the growth still happening, even though those were inflated at the beginning of the year, we were very happy with that. One of the conversations that we've been having with teachers, one big question they've had is, well, which one do you think is more important, achievement or growth? And that question has come up multiple times. And in a normal year, we would want to look at those. I think both evenly. We want to see high levels of achievement, and we also want to see a large amount of growth. But honestly, in the year of COVID, what our teachers have been focusing more on is growth, because we know that the achievement is probably lower than where it should be. And this test is comparing them to students taking this test in a normal year. And so we're very, very excited about the growth that we've seen. And that's kind of the main thing that we're looking at when we're going through our scores individually as students is making sure that there's growth. We would love to see high levels of achievement, but having missed half a year of school last year, and then the amount of quarantines and all of that stuff that have been happening throughout this year, the achievement part of it is kind of null at this point. But we are very, very excited about the growth that we've seen so far.
Okay, this is Lori from Venus Elementary. And if you look at our data and we really started breaking it down, we really realized that we are consistently making growth across the board. We have some larger pockets, if you will, of growth than we do in other places. But then when we started looking at groups of kids, it may be that one class has had 4 or 5 kids out on quarantine 2 to 3 times now, which is also frustrating to the teachers because they've got to get those kids back to class and get them caught up for the time that they've missed while they were out, because we do have students who, when they were out on quarantine, really were not online. So it's been a crazy year with the back and forth. But we were pleased that we were seeing growth across the board. We have made all of our students, and this is for all of our campuses, any students who were failing one or more subject at the 6 weeks, we've looked at those reports and we've told those parents that we need those students back on campus because they're not being successful at home. We had a large group of 3rd grade students that came back at semester. I still had 2 full classes of regular 3rd grade that were online, and we had a whole class come back of the 2. And I will tell you, those 2 teachers have said it was like starting over in August. Like the students just kind of forgot about what do you do and how do you raise your hand and how do you do this. It was like starting over with August babies in January. And then those students were just back in class for just a few weeks, well, just a handful of days, some of them, before they took the middle of the year test. So it has been interesting. MAP data for some students can give you up to 20 pages of data on what a student needs, or you may have a student that's in the blue area that you get just half a page. What's also interesting is that Karen mentioned on the reports, the predictor reports that you can see for ACT, the college readiness. MAP even does that for elementary age students. So you can look at that report, and if they stay on the same track that they're on, it is also giving a predictor not only for STAR, but for ACT and college readiness. So I think next year we will be able to use the data easier without being so overwhelmed, because there is absolutely so much data that comes with MAP. I think each year we will be able to really hone in on the parts that will give us the biggest bang for our buck, if you will, with all of our students. And it's really helped key in for our interventionist on the major foundational gaps that our students have, and they've really been able to focus on that. So we're just trying to put all that together with kids coming in and out and with kids still being online. And it has been an adventure, but hopefully next year will be much smoother, and we will start school in August with all of our kids at school.
Right, so that is the whole report. We also have some information from our pre-K kiddos. I don't know that you have that, and we can make sure you get that next month also. But there's also some really good data there for our pre-K kids growing. Unfortunately, this particular test does not test pre-K students, but the group that we have seems to be doing well also. Are there any questions that I can answer for you?
I don't think anyone has any questions. Do you have anything to add? Can you hear me, Dr. Morgan?
Yes. Okay. No, I don't have anything else for this. Just know that we are working very diligently with each grade, with each PLC team, with each teacher to make sure that they have what they need so that we can give the students what they need.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Well, and I appreciate your presentation, Dr. Morgan, and I apologize. It was a rather lengthy presentation, but considering there were 62 slides here, it was abbreviated quite a bit. There's a lot of data here, and we have a lot that we're working with our teachers. Our principals are doing a great job of working with our teachers too. But as Mrs. Box said, there's so much information here, and it's great to be able to go back and drill down. So again, thank you, Dr. Morgan.
Okay, we'll go to item number 8, annual review of technology department plan. Mr. Domain.
I only have like 107 slides, so it's not, no, I'm just kidding. If you can just hit present up there, top right. Perfect. Okay. Since we're talking about achievement, I kind of want to brag on us just a little bit on the school itself. Liz, this isn't working. Go ahead and hit that button for me, please. So we've accomplished quite a bit in quite a short amount of time, to tell you the truth. In our district, we've extended our one-to-one, and in the amount of time that we did that is actually pretty darn amazing. And it wasn't just my department, it was everybody pulling together to do this. So I just wanted to do a shout out to all the principals, assistant principals, teachers especially. They have really done a great job grabbing onto this one-to-one initiative and using it on a daily basis. So I'm very, very proud of Venus. It's something I've never really seen before, and so I'm very, very impressed. Go ahead, Liz. We have put together a server infrastructure that I would put up against any school district in Texas. It's pretty doggone solid. We just introduced this year a backup for that that actually goes up to the cloud in AWS. So if something were catastrophic were to happen, we have all of our data safe in the cloud. We can bring it back down after we rebuild that data center, if like a tornado hit or God forbid, something like that happen. Go ahead, Liz. Again, our network infrastructure, I would put up against anyone out there. We're about to extend that. When we started, we had 1 gig to several campuses, less than a gig to other places. We are now 10 gig everywhere. We're extending that actually to DAEP and the portable buildings. That's actually almost done, and possibly the Ag Barn, Mr. Moore. Go ahead. Last year, right as COVID was hitting, we also put in new print management. We got a whole bunch of Canon copiers, got rid of the Xerox ones because they were causing a whole bunch of problems for us. So we were able to put in new Canon copiers, and they are working pretty well. When we started this venture, we were at barely a gig worth of wireless internet. We just recently acquired our second 10 gig internet connection. That's actually going to be running in tandem with the first one that we got from Region 11, and it will be additional bandwidth. We got both of those through E-rate, so we're not paying full price for any of those. We're paying about 10%. We also installed a very robust communication system, our MyTel phone system, and a program called Synapse that actually allows us to do paging and bells and stuff like that too. One of the pain points that we had when I first arrived here was the camera system. It was pretty antiquated. We have put in a new network camera system that consists of approximately 300 plus cameras. We're adding some more pretty soon to that. We had to add another server. One of the servers was quite old. We replaced that. Next year we'll be replacing one more of those servers, and we should be good for those for a while. We were able to replace, thanks to you all, we were able to replace very antiquated teacher workstations. We went ahead and did that with laptops because it was better for them to be more mobile. So that's kind of where we are right now. We're sitting pretty good. There's a couple things that I wanted to go over for future. Go ahead, Liz. Our wireless infrastructure, we have a older wireless infrastructure that was put in probably about a year and a half, probably 2 years before I got here. It's ready to be replaced. It doesn't do the latest 802.11, which is the IEEE standards. And you'll see what that means in just a second. One of the things that we're kind of hitting 2 birds with 1 stone here. One of the things that we're proposing is a new wireless system. Go ahead, Liz. If you all remember, we put in Ruckus switches, network switches throughout our district. So we are completely Ruckus switches all over the place. These are enterprise class switches. And what we're wanting to do is add Ruckus Wireless to that too. So what that does for us is it gives us a single pane of glass to manage both wireless infrastructure and wired infrastructure. Go ahead. These new access points will be Wi-Fi 6.0, which is 802.11x, which stands for the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. It's a standard that they put out. That's the industry standard. Go ahead. We had several RFP proposals for our wireless through E-rate. This is all through E-rate. E-rate covers this. The first one is a company out of Minneapolis, I believe. they were the highest price. They did propose Ruckus wireless access points. Go ahead. There's another one, Red River. They're down in South Texas near San Antonio. I've heard of Juniper. They don't really fit into our network, although they were quite a bit less expensive. Go ahead. TFE is a company that we worked with before for a lot of our network drops. They're actually doing the fiber to our DAP and our portable buildings. They came in at actually the lowest price. They were proposing HP Aruba. CDWG also proposed HP Aruba. Go ahead. Then we had Advanced Networks. They proposed Cisco Meraki. I'm not real fond of them. And Synergy Technologies also proposed Ruckus. We've also done a lot of business with Synergy. I'm sure you all have seen that company up there before. Go ahead, Liz. So we had a criteria that we put this through a scoring rubric. E-Rate says that the only criteria that they mandate is that the price has to be weighted higher than anything else. So as you can see up there, TFE was the lowest price, so they scored the highest, and then kind of on down. Anybody have any questions on that scoring rubric? Anything? Can you see? You okay?
About half of it.
Okay. Do I need to move back?
You're perfect right
Okay.
now.
Okay, go ahead, Liz. Okay, so there was 2 RFP proposals. Go ahead, Liz, again. That I picked out. Technology for Education and Synergy Technologies. The district is only going to wind up paying about 15% of that, of either one of those prices, because E-Rate's going to pick up about 85%. Go ahead, Liz. So Synergy is going to basically cost us $16,896, and TFE is going to cost us about $15,17, which is a difference of $1,879. I am actually proposing to go with Ruckus, again, because that single pane of glass is going to help us manage that a whole lot easier. There's nothing wrong with HP Aruba. It's a good product. It's going to do what we want it to do. Their licensing structure is a bit confusing, but again, I'm going to propose Ruckus because for the amount of money that we're going to be paying extra for that, because E-Rate is picking up 85% of it, is minimal compared to the ease of management that we're going to have with Ruckus as opposed to HP Aruba. So where we're sitting at, I want to talk about our future needs. Where we're sitting at personnel right now, go ahead, Liz. We, of course, have a director, which is me. We have a junior network admin. His name is Cameron. He's doing a fantastic job. I have 2 network technicians, Daniel and Jeremy, who also do a fabulous job. I have an assistant that takes care of all of my POs and helps me with my calendar and stuff like that. And then for our senior network admin position, we did a contract, if you all remember, we did a contract with Synergy Technologies, and that's actually working out very, very well. One of the things that we're having an issue with is mobile devices. We kind of were thrown into going one-to-one district-wide pretty quick. That has caused a lot of, I've got to take this off, I can't breathe. That has caused a lot of tickets. Probably I would say about anywhere between 60 to 70% of our tickets right now that are open are mobile device tickets. It's a full-time job to try to manage those tickets. So in the future, very soon future, I'm hoping, and Michelle says I have money for it in my budget right now, is a mobile device specialist. And another district that I was in previously, When we went one-to-one district-wide, we actually hired a person that was our mobile device specialist. That person is busy, busy, busy. It is a full-time job. Another thing that's coming up that we're going to request in the future, probably on next year's budget, is a next generation firewall. Go ahead, Liz. Right now, we're running a firewall called pfSense. pfSense is very good. It is inexpensive. However, it does not do machine learning, which is very important in this day and age, considering how smart cyber criminals are getting. What a next-gen firewall can do is, if we have a TCP/IP port that's open for a specific traffic, for example, HTTPS, which is secure internet traffic. If we have that open, this firewall will can block something that's not that traffic, but it doesn't. If somebody tries to come in on that port, all it sees is that it's HTTPS traffic. It doesn't see any kind of abnormalities. Whereas a next-gen firewall will see those abnormalities and shut it down, while still allowing that HTTPS traffic going back and forth. So there's a couple that I've looked at. FortiGate is one of them that kind of impressed me, and so that's going to be something that we're looking for in the future. One more thing that I would recommend for future, and I'm actually putting it in the budget, requesting it in the budget for next year as well, is email archiving. We have with Google, with our Google domain, we have e-discovery. It is very, very cumbersome to try to find something. There have been several times where someone has done an open records request. It takes me probably about 8 to 10 hours to get that information together for Deanne, and then it takes a whole lot more time for her to go through that information. An email archiving solution would cut that down to a very small fraction of the time, because there's a whole lot more of them that are out there, and I'm recommending Barracuda Networks for that. And that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yes.
Just back on the mobile device specialist.
Sure.
As when we talk about mobile device, are we talking about the laptops, the Apple tablets, et cetera?
We're talking about iPads and Chromebooks.
Chromebooks. Okay. And I can see that.
Yes, it's a beast. It is.
Okay.
It's a giant beast.
How many have we added in the past year?
Well, we've added from pre-K all the way through 8th grade, which is, well over 1,000 kids.
Well over 1,000, 1,600.
Yeah, and we did it
Ish.
really, really quick.
And you guys can keep up with that?
We have 125 open tickets right now.
Can I ask on the iPads? Are we seeing a lot of issues with the iPads, more than we probably expected? Or, I mean, I know with
there have been a few. There have been quite a few. Steve can back me up on this. There's several of them that have just been, that have come back just completely shattered.
that was one of my concerns.
I'll jump in too. A big part, one of the things that I do, and it's kind of one of my daily tasks, is assigning iPads, unassigning iPads. I've been taking care of all of that just because it's easier for us to do it on the campus. And because there's just not anybody else that can do that. So if something does end up getting broken, we end up having to reassign a new iPad to them, and it's a pretty lengthy process to do that too.
Okay. And he shouldn't have to be doing that. He's a principal. He needs to be taking care of his campus. I mean, this is just my opinion. He doesn't need to be doing that.
So you're saying as part of your proposal is having somebody that's special. That's their job.
That would be their job,
Daily
taking
job
care
is
of
to take care of
everything,
seeing of those.
everything mobile device. whether it's Chromebook assignment, whether it's iPad assignment, reassigning it in the mobile device management system, whether it's making sure that if something is lost, they can lock it down in either Google for Chromebooks or Jamf for iPads, whether it's sending them off for repair because we don't have the parts here to do it, inventorying all of them, the whole 9 yards, everything that has to do with mobile
That would work
devices.
in coordination with each coordinator or each admin for each schools.
Yes.
Okay.
They would work for the technology department.
For the
but it would
technology,
be-
but yes, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Daniel, this is Lori from the elementary.
Yes,
If
ma'am.
if I could add, I will say I have been pleasantly surprised that any parent that has had to pay for a charger or has had to pay for actual Chromebook, we have not had one parent complaint about that. The parents have paid because they know that their student can't get another charger or get another Chromebook, and my school community has embraced that very well. And after the first couple of kids had to pay for a Chromebook, it kind of slacked off the damage part of it. Not that anybody was doing anything intentionally. They just, when you have a second grader or third grader that's never had a Chromebook before, things happen and they don't realize there's certain things that they can't do with them. But we've had no trouble getting reimbursed from parents for anything that has been damaged.
Well, that's good to know, Ms. Fox. Thank you.
The main thing that's on the agenda for approval, if I'm not incorrect, is to approve the purchase through E-rate of the wireless access points.
That's the next item.
Any other
more-
questions?
any
Sorry, I
more
didn't mean to step on your
questions
toes.
On that report from Daniel, he's trying to get ahead of us, that's what he's.
I'm very, very sorry.
You can stand right there though, just in case. Okay, we'll go to that next item. Consider, item 9, consider approval of wireless RFP award under the E-rate wireless access point project.
And I'm recommending to award that to Synergy Technologies.
And they have the Rutgers, right?
Correct.
And that's as good as the HP, or better than the HP.
To me, it's better because it's going to fit in better with our system. We have Ruckus switches, and Ruckus wireless and Ruckus switches can be managed through a single pane of glass, the same management system. If we went with a HP Aruba, again, nothing wrong with HP Aruba. They have a good product. But it would be 2 different management systems to manage both of them. So it would have to be switching back and forth and making them talk and everything like that, which we can do. It's just a little bit more work. This one is a single pane of glass where we can manage both switches and thank you, both switches and wireless access points from a single pane of glass.
Okay. Any more questions on that? Okay. I'll make a motion that we accept that bid by Sierra Energy.
Synergy.
And that was that's gonna be about what, you say, 16?
It's going to be about 16, what was it? 16 something.
Anyway. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
We have a second by Tasha. It's something about that seat. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed, motion passes.
Thank y'all.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go to item number 10, the consent agenda. 10A is approval of previous month's board minutes. 10B, approval of additions, revisions, or deletions to local policies as recommended by TASB Policy Service and according to the instruction sheet for TASB Localized Policy Manual Update 116. Item 10C is approval of 2021-2022 academic calendar. Item 10D is approval of Venus resolution requesting Governor Abbott to include public school district personnel in the official expert vaccine allotment panel definition of frontline workers. 10E, approval of resolution amending authorized representatives for text pool. 10F, approval to add James Hopper and Katie John Bruno and remove Michelle Salazar on the signature cards for the Cowboy Bank of Texas. 10G, approval of Lone Star Investment Pool, additional authorized representative. 10H, approval of Canon annual lease payment not to exceed $50,000. 10I, approval of missed school day waivers. And 10J, approval of other attendance waivers. Is there any of these you'd like to take off the consent agenda for discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion by Chad, a second by Greg. All in favor? All in favor, motion passes. Okay. Let's go to item number 11, consider adoption of Venus ISD legislative priorities for the Texas 87th legislature.
Okay, I believe you have the sheet in front of you, and I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail unless, of course, you have questions. We can, this is just something that we would adopt to take down to send to our representatives in Austin. And as a matter of fact, I've got a meeting next Tuesday with our representative down in his office in Austin, and we're trying to get the same meeting with our senator, Senator Birdwell. So just real briefly on these, on the funding issues, to replace ADA funding with ADM funding. And what that means is, instead of average daily attendance, average daily membership. And ADA is it's like nailing an egg to the wall. Average daily membership means enrollment, not attendance. And so that's the difference between those two. Next one is continue hold harmless through spring semester 2021 for funding purposes. That's just simply due to this being a COVID year. C, funding for Reading Academy and K-3 teachers and administrators. That's something that was an unfunded mandate that came out in the last legislative session, and it's going to be quite costly. D, eliminate unfunded mandates this legislative session, especially in the midst of COVID. Next one, TRS, to maintain defined benefits instead of converting to defined contribution plan. That's very, very huge as far as recruiting teachers into the profession. The next one, TRS, stop allowing mid-year retirements. This is not conducive to quality student instruction, is a burden on ISD budgets, and hiring mid-year is extremely difficult. C, relief from unrealistic expectations not pertaining to bus safety for bus driver certification exams, especially in light of scarcity of bus drivers. Right now, it's almost as difficult to become a bus driver as it is to become a teacher. Next one, accountability, state testing spring of 2021. And so we would address simply reducing those tests and certainly not holding schools accountable for those scores. And I realize they've already taken some action on that, but we'll be pursuing that nonetheless as far as the testing regs. On accountability 2022 with college and career readiness, basically let's go forward with that as our accountability piece. Last couple here are just simply leveling the playing field. Equal representation concerns over restriction of schools and municipalities to lobby the state legislature. This is actually quite a big move in Austin to make it to where schools can't become members of organizations like TASB, who then go to Austin and lobby on our behalf, or the Equity Center. And so they're basically saying you're not going to be able to use public school funds to do that. And that creates a huge inequity in Austin for public school districts. And the last one down there, make charter school accountability equal to that of ISDs. So that's what I would present to you as, and open that up to any additions, deletions, or whatever you'd like to do with that.
We, do we play charter schools in sports? Can you make an addition that we don't place charter schools in sports? I mean, cause they can get people from everywhere. We can't.
That's a UIL issue.
Yeah. Let's
And,
talk to UIL. I think it's crazy.
It does, and I feel for the schools that are in, there are some schools that are in districts and they're the only ISD in an all otherwise charter district. It's a difficult thing.
All right. Okay,
Well, I'll make a motion to adopt the Venus ISD legislative priorities for the Texas 87th legislature.
have a motion by Chad,
Second.
a second by Tasha. Oh, Katie. It sounded like it came from over that direction. A second by Katie. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed. Motion passes. Okay, let's go to item 12. Consider approval of payment to Arlington ISD for shared services of the DEF program, not to exceed $100,000 for the school year 2020 through 2021. Inclusive fall payment is $41,574.40.
There we go. Our fall payment is the $41,574.40. So I wanted to go ahead and get you all's approval to do just not to exceed $100,000. I don't think it'll come to that since the fall was 41. But I just want to have it covered, and then that way nobody else has to worry about that in the in the late summer when the next payment comes up. So it'll come up in July or August more than likely.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the payment to Arlington ISD for shared services of the DEF program not to exceed $100,000 for the school year 2021. It's inclusive of the fall payment of $41,574.40.
Okay, we have a motion by Tasha,
I'll second it.
second by Chad. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed, motion passes. All right, item 13, consider approval of year-to-date investment report.
Basically, it just shows. The report shows our beginning balances and our ending balances, and then our year-to-date interest. As you can see, so we earned $67,193 in interest for the 2020 school calendar year. The next page is our approved training providers and the list of brokers and dealers that are eligible to be able to use as investment pools or the bank or different. The last one is a investment brokerage company. The next page just shows the statement of compliance that we were in compliance for the 2020 school year. It should say, I'll have to get that changed. It's always numbers. And the board resolution regarding review of investment program. And then that has to be adopted. And then the next page is the compliance with public funds. And it just shows that, like in number 1, that we have written policies. And number 2, that the policy and strategies are reviewed at least annually through this document, and that the board adopts any changes. The annual report ensures compliance. Then 3, the board shall perform compliance audit of management controls on the investments and adhere to board's established investment policies. The compliance audit shall performed in conjunction with the annual physical audit. So that was done as part of our audit, so we're good there. Number 4 is adopt a separate written investment strategy, and that's done with the annual report. And then number 5, the investment officer must complete at least one training within the 12 months of assuming office, and then at least 8 hours each year for a 2-year period. And I've completed 10 years, and Mr. Hopper has to finish his now, and he'll be added. Investments shall be made with judgment and care that a person of prudence would exercise in the management of their own affairs, not a speculation for the investments considering safety and income. So all the objectives, investments are in CDs or pool funds, which inherently have these objectives. And then the investment officer is subject to special provisions if personal business relations exist between her or the broker and dealer. And then I do not have an account with the bank, and I do not have an account with any of the brokers, so I'm good. The investment officer shall prepare at least a quarterly written report. So we have those quarterly reports that you all get to show that we comply with that provision. And that is it. Any other questions?
Make a motion to approve the year-to-date investment report.
Have a motion by Chad. Second by Greg. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed, motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, go to item 14, consider approval of general fund budget amendment.
Okay, so on the general fund budget amendment, we are adding the $811,800 to the state revenue, and that's for the bus grant money that came in. And then I'm going to skip down to function 36. That $116,500 is the track. I'm moving it from there down to 81, where it needs to really be coding wise. And the expense will move with it, with the budget. I went ahead and added 200,000 just to cover any little extra additional costs we may incur for the portables, and also to relieve the $43,000 worth of fiber out of Mr. Domain's budget. He's gone. So that way it'll help him to be able to finish using his money. And then the rest of it, I'm just going to put it into instruction just to sit there for an extra, just a little placeholder for right now. If anything comes up, or it just rolls into fund balance. And that's it.
Any more questions?
Any
Or any
questions?
questions?
I'll make a motion to approve the general fund budget amendment as presented.
Have a motion by Chad.
I'll second it.
A second by Tasha. I've got to get my hearing aids where I can hear.
Oh, I should turn my thing on.
Your all's voices behind masks sound the same.
Push the button.
Okay. All right. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed, motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, now we will go to executive session for 551-072, 551-074, and 551-076 at 8:49.
Hey Liz, you got me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Loud and clear.
So as we've discussed, the consider of approval for updated stipend schedule. This would be a salary schedule, a stipend schedule that would allow teachers to go from $25 an hour to $35 an hour, and would allow our paraprofessionals to go from $15 an hour to $25 an hour for summer school purposes for each of those.
I make a motion to approve the updated stipend schedule to reflect summer school salary for teachers and paraprofessional staff.
Motion by Tasha,
I'll second it.
second by Chad. All in favor? All in favor, motion passes. Okay. Item 19, consider approval of board resolution concerning compensation for virtual learning closure days.
I'll make a motion to approve the board resolution concerning compensation for virtual learning days.
Motion by Chad,
Second.
second by Katie. All in favor? All in favor, none opposed, motion passes. Okay. Item 20, reports. First one we have is 20A, superintendent report.
Well, I wanted to give you a little bit of feedback from coming back from our closure. First, we had the two leaks I'd mentioned to you in texts or audio messages or whatever they were. One was there in the middle school. That's near an outside. Well, it's actually it's very near an outside wall. And as I said, that one was cleaned up fairly quickly. Got water down in the elevator shaft and all the way down that hallway. We will have some damage to the gym floor. Right now, it's unclear how extensive that's going to be. It doesn't cover a large area, but the warping of the wood, time's going to tell with that in the next few weeks. We continue to dry that out, but at some point, I expect, depending on the extent of it, we'll probably have to come down and either sand that down and refinish it, or worst case scenario, replace that wood altogether. But we're talking about probably a 15 square foot, maybe a little bit larger than that, but 15 to 20 square foot area. It's not going to be a huge part of that gym floor, but anyway, we're just going to have to wait and see what sort of damage that's going to do. That's and we then Saturday night we had a leak at the old wood shop that we found, and so that got all through the building, and got some brand new electronics equipment wet. So we don't know the extent of that damage yet. We were able to get on that again pretty quickly, within a matter of hours anyway, and took the electronics equipment out of the boxes, aired it out. Water and electronics doesn't mix, so no matter how quickly you get to it. So we will see what the extent of that damage is, but those pipes have been fixed, of course, and that's been cleaned up as well. All of this will be turned in with our insurance. And we did have one more that I was reminded of that I'd forgotten about, actually. It's the water pipes under the house out here by the ag building, the ag house. So it's a mobile home that's set up, and that took a pretty heavy hit. But because our ag teacher who lives there on a regular basis wasn't in the house at the time, so we weren't able to. We didn't notice it as quickly. And so I don't know that the damage really extended inside the house because much of it was underneath. So it's just a matter of replacing the plumbing underneath that house. Opened back up today, and we knew that our attendance would be down because we have some people that are still fixing their houses. We did have 92% attendance today across the district, and so that was actually a little bit surprisingly high, to be honest with you. Kids seem to be doing well. Got out on campuses today, and seem to be in good spirits and everything else. Portables are just about ready to use. We had fire alarm inspection today. Haven't heard back from Ronnie to see how that went, but we've got just a little bit of furniture to pick up from another school district, and I think we're about ready to roll with those things. So that's our update.
Mr. Moore, do you have something to add to your report?
Well, just real quickly on, you had the weld off in the board packet. And so we're putting together the first annual CTU weld off. We had planned it for last year. So God willing and COVID goes away, we'll make provisions to have that first annual. So just get that on your calendar. It's going to be a great event for our welding kids. The other thing is we currently have 7 visitors at the DAP Hilton. That number is going down, which is a good thing. But with the addition of the portables and the fact that we have fiber on that side of the pavement, I want to give a shout out to Daniel and his guys. We now have cameras in DAP. That's something that I've asked for a while. And so now we have the ability to have security within that building. So that's a great thing. And I just wanted to give those guys kudos for making that happen. Any questions on any of the items that I had put up?
On that welding, what is it?
It's a build off. Yeah.
Can anybody come to that, or how's it?
Well,
do you have to have tickets or what?
Well, no. It will be somewhat open to the public. Basically, what's going to happen is we had several schools in the area that wanted in last year, and then we had to shut it down because of the COVID. But they're taking entries right now, and basically what will happen is on that date, we'll have quadrant off areas on the parking lot at the stadium, and teams will set up their rigs, and basically you have to be self-sufficient. So you'll bring generators, welders, all those things in, and we'll supply them with a kit with blueprints, and then they'll have X amount of time to put that together. And we have judges lined up that will judge the accuracy, the weld quality, and those sorts of things. It'll be a great day. We're putting together 2 teams. I asked Mr. Webb, I said, I'd really like to have an all-girls team. I don't know if we'll be able to put that together, but on the actual day of the contest, you'll be able to come visit, and it'll be a good thing to come watch, because it'll be several surrounding schools, teams that will come in and have that task at hand and try to put out a finished product before the time expires.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Moore? Do you have anything to add to the athletic report, Mr.
Well, just understand that with the recent ice issues, some of our spring schedules have been adjusted for softball, baseball, and of course soccer. But it was good to go out to see a ton of kids running around a brand new surface this afternoon in the sunshine. And so we're about to gear up, and springtime has hit. So we'll have kids going everywhere.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to the Chief Financial Officer report.
The cash position report ended with 15,709,594, which is up, and that's due to our taxes coming in December and January. And the next page is your general fund, and we're up over 5 million right now. The next page is the child nutrition. They're down slightly, about 44,000, so hopefully we'll pick that up a little bit and she won't be so low. And then the next one is the debt service, and we've got the 2,000,006, just because we hadn't made the payment yet in January, but that was made February 15th. And then the next one is just the general fund revenue sources. And then the summary of other revenue under 2%. And then the expenditure by area. Instruction is still running about where it needs to be, over 50%. And then the last page is the revenues versus the expenditures for the 199 account. Comparison from this year to last year's. So we're actually have a little bit more revenue this year than we did last year at this time. So taxes were a little bit higher. And then we have the check register. Does anybody have any questions?
Go back that first chart. On this one.
Which one?
Up, the other way.
That one?
You come on down.
That one? Mm-hmm.
Now, is the dark black line where we are now?
Yes. This one is where we're at right now, right there.
So actually, we're going, does it look like
We're going up.
start downhill like
We started downhill, but we always do in August.
Right.
And then we start this is where we get our payments, and then we start heading back up. And then it'll start coming back down. Because we gotta pay everything. We stop getting all our state payments.
Next month will look good.
It'll come down next month. Cause we don't get our state payment, and so it'll start coming down, and then once we start paying payroll each month, and there's ever so often we don't get a payment, and so that's when it starts going down. The reason why it goes up is because of the taxes.
Okay.
So, but that's what keeps us going up instead of staying level the whole time.
She could say because she's leaving this.
Thank you, Michelle. Anybody have any more questions for Michelle? Okay. Chief Wood, do you have anything you want to talk about tonight?
Okay, so the report that y'all were given before is inaccurate. I'm sorry about that. I was too greedy about getting my stuff in early to Liz and put the wrong file in there. So the one that you have printed with you is what is correct for January of 2021. The first slide of it shows where my time was spent based on activity. You can see, of course, the high school is 30%, and it's always going to be a little bit higher than anywhere else, just because that's where most of my attention has to stay most of the time. Anybody have any questions about? That's where I'm at the schools, kind of watching parents drop off, greeting kids, stuff like that, or at the end of release and everything else, kind of being at campuses or right out in front of it, being present around those times. I'm present quite often in the mornings and afternoons around the schools. Any other questions about that? The second one is the graph shows by minutes, on a percentage of minutes throughout that month. Of course, a lot of my time is athletic, just because athletic events are hours and hours at a time. So I kind of take that one off, but I still have to show it. The other ones are follow-ups, investigations. Usually if you're taking a report, taking the report isn't a time restraint most of the time. It's just all the follow-up stuff that you have to do with it. Looking at video or interviewing people, talking to different people, getting statements, whatever else. And then, of course, the other one that's pretty high is paperwork, and that kind of goes with a lot of the administrative things also that I have to do, especially with the state mandates and everything else too, emergency management stuff. So, any questions on that one? Okay, so where I want to go is that next one. So December 2020, there was 10 calls for services. Excuse me. And in January 2021, there was 15, so I was up 33%. But we had 2 weeks off during December also, okay, because of Christmas break. But if you look at the last two columns, January 2021 and January 2020, it shows that there's a 27% increase from that year. I don't know what's causing that, but I can tell you one thing is because we have a lot more kids back. I believe a lot of it is kids were cooped up, so now they're not cooped up and they're just getting back into their old routine and stuff. And I think that has a lot to do with it, with kids being at home and not being able to do things. So this next month, I'm not sure what that's going to look like for February compared to last month, but then we get into March of 2020, and that's when we start shutting things down, so it's going to look totally different in March. Any questions on the report itself? Okay. The second item that I have is state mandate. It's under dealing with racial profiling. I think you all should have a copy where it's highlighted in yellow right there, where it says under the code that, under Article 2.134, that not later than March 1st of each year, each law enforcement agency shall submit a report containing the incident-based data compiled during the previous calendar year to the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, which is the government agency over law enforcement officers in Texas. And if the law enforcement agency is a local law enforcement agency, to the governing body of each county or municipality served by the agency. So my report has to go to the school board, okay? And I'm getting it to you before March 1st. I have already submitted this information to TCOL also. And this report has to be, what it says in little c there, it has to be done by myself and everything else. So what you have in hand is the racial profiling that was sent to Texas TCOL. Now, of course, there was only 7 traffic stops, and this is done on traffic stops. That's where they base their racial profiling data from, is from traffic stops. One of the things that you'll see different from my report than other agencies is, did you know the race before you made the stop? Well, most of the time I'm going to, because the way I position myself, I'm going to see who's passing by me as I conduct radar or something else. Also, they want you this year now is to start breaking it down into different categories of race, sex, everything else. Every question they have is based on race and sex or ethnicity. And if you look at our ethnicity, and I went by what our demographics are for the school district, that's the only thing I have to compare it to is our student population. I'm not really looking at the male and female because that can be disoriented with parents and people driving through. But you look at your ethnicity, we've got 64.33% Hispanic. And so that's going to correlate evenly with my stops and everything else too. And when you look at gender, am I going to have more stops around here with females or males? More females than males, just because there's more moms that are dropping their kids off at school than fathers. So if I saw that there was any irregularities in this, then that's where I would have to make a report to TCOL on if I find myself at fault of racial profiling or not. And they also ask if there was any complaints on any of my traffic stops or anything else, which there was not any complaints. So any questions regarding that report?
Do you write paper tickets or do you utilize software?
I have paper tickets, and I have not written a single ticket yet, which this says. I was using this first year as educational. I want to educate everybody to make sure that and if you go out there, you can tell people are slowing down. They're not going through as fast because they see me all around. I've had people make comments about that also, that they see me every morning out there driving around or parked somewhere or radar and everything else and stuff. If I do write a citation, it is paper and it goes to the city court.
So if you're around here anywhere around drop-off pickup time, they're going 15 miles per hour, I'm telling you. So,
Majority of them. I've had some new ones that have come into the area recently and they don't realize it. And then they don't realize the speed limit's 20 miles an hour anyway, even when it's not school zone, except for on 157 come through town, that's 30. And a lot of new people don't realize that either, that all the streets in town are 20. So.
Thank you, Chief Wood. Anybody
Okay.
have any more
Anybody else?
questions?
Good. Okay. Thank y'all.